Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Rachel Collins. I'm a project manager with the Park Service, and I'm going to be facilitating the meeting tonight. We've got a couple other folks on from the Park Service. We'll do intros here in a second. Before we jump into that, I did want to run through a few logistics. We are in Teams Live tonight and working in this Teams Live environment this afternoon. So a couple things to orient you to this space that we're in. In that top right-hand corner is your Q&A box. We are going to be doing Q&A during the meeting this afternoon, early evening. So you can go ahead and open that box up, type your questions in. We do have a crew of staff who are working here in the background who are gathering up those questions throughout the presentation, curating them into kind of themes and topics so we can answer as many of them as we can as we go. So feel free to use that feature at any time to let us know what your questions are. We also, if you have issues with sound, you can adjust the sound in the lower left-hand corner sound. And if you need captioning during this meeting, there is closed captioning built right into this system down in the lower right-hand corner. You can go ahead, pop that open, and that's where you'll get your captioning. So once again, thanks for joining us for this meeting. We want to take this time to set some context for what it looks like to be managing quality visitor use experiences, not just now at Grand Teton, but over the history of the park. We want to be providing an overview of key insights from recent studies and also setting up the discussion for future management and how we're going to be doing going into the future. So we want to be really cultivating that conversation. We've got a presentation set up with a couple of speakers to kind of walk you through not only the history, but also what we're learning through the last 3 years through some studies. So this afternoon, you're going to be hearing from our superintendent, Chip Jenkins, and sharing with us about where we've been throughout this process. My name is Rachel Collins. I will be on sharing a little bit of context about what visitor use management is, how we think about it in the agency, how we're leveraging it at Grand Teton. And we're also going to be hearing from Jen Newton, who is a social scientist at Grand Teton. She's going to be sharing some recent insights with us so that we're learning about contemporary visitor use management at the park. So I just shared that agenda a little bit, but just to give you a roadmap of where we're going in this presentation, we're going to be talking about where we've been, where we are, where we're going, how you can be involved in this process as we continue to go forward, and then have some time at the end for Q&A. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our superintendent, Chip Jenkins, to say hello, welcome us to the meeting, and dive into a little bit of history on where we've been with VUM at Grand Teton.
Rachel, thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction, and to everybody who is tuning in this evening, thank you for taking time to join us. We hope that this will be interesting for you. And we can't emphasize enough how important your role is in terms of providing us your thoughts and your feedback. So let's get going. I think part of the, one of the things is, I've been here at Grand Teton National Park for about 2.5 years, and from the moment I arrived, I started getting questions from people about when is Grand Teton going to start doing visitor use management. And I think it's actually really important to understand is that the National Park Service has been doing visitor use management, visitor experience management at Grand Teton for a very long time. In fact, it's been going on for about 100 years. It's a story that's actually older than the park itself. At key moments in our history, we have learned that there are better ways for us to achieve our resource protection and visitor experience goals. We've learned in those cases, and the park has been better for it. So I'm going to highlight a few of the key moments in this history. So when we say visitor use management is going on for 100 years, we're referring to a series of events that started actually in the 1920s, when members of the community here and others interested in the preservation of Jackson Hole began the effort to do just that, make sure that we were preserving this place. One of the first such events took place 100 years ago this past July, and it was the meeting at Maud Noble's cabin that happened in 1923. And at this meeting, a grocery store owner, a newspaper owner, a rancher, and a transportation system operator, Maud Noble, who owned the ferry, all met with the Yellowstone superintendent to discuss their concerns about commercial development that was happening at the base of the Teton Range. They were these participants wanted to save the valley for the future visitors and what they saw from tawdry exploration. They were concerned. That the way things were happening in the valley might actually destroy the character of the valley and disrupt actually the very resources and the very economic opportunity that they saw going forward. So it was from this meeting that this group devised this Jackson Hole Plan, which was the idea that they would use private philanthropy working together with local leaders in order to be able to preserve and to protect this place, and activities that actually still are going on today. So then, building on the initial work in initial plans, site-specific in the 1920s, the National Park Service actually produced a preliminary plan for Grand Teton National Park in 1941. And the primary emphasis of this plan was to disperse visitation around the landscape and make sure that the effects from increasing development in the region were minimized. A central piece of this plan was related to automobile circulation, car circulation, and the desire to separate the fast-paced traffic that needed to held elsewhere in Wyoming from the more scenic park and contemplative traffic. And if you see the quote on this slide, it summarizes it nicely in terms of our aim would be to present the west side of the valley unspoiled to the public for their best interest and not for those who are always in a hurry and do not have time or inclination to enjoy the true values of such a superlative, pristine area. Following World War II, there was explosive growth in people visiting national parks across the country, including here at Grand Teton. Recognizing this trend, John D. Rockefeller, in concert with the National Park Service, sought to use Grand Teton as a place to demonstrate how new facilities could support growing visitation while also protecting park resources. And this was a time when there was a tremendous growth in the development of facilities here at Grand Teton. This growth was also predicated on the supporting the idea of dispersing visitation across the landscape, across the entire park. And it was at this time that Jackson Lake Lodge began construction in 1953 and was completed in 55. Coulter Bay was a pilot project for the entire National Park Service in terms of how to create a village to support visitation. And it was in the mid-1950s that included bringing cabins from around the valley to Coulter Bay, building tent campgrounds, the campground, the marina, the store, all with the visitor center opening in 1958. Many of the campgrounds in the park, Gravant, Coulter Bay, Lizard Creek, Signal, is the time when they all started to come into being. And as much as 150 miles of trail were added to the park during the decades of the 50s and 60s, including the trail going from Granite Canyon connecting to the new tram at the top of Rendezvous Peak, part of a multi-pronged economic development effort that was connected to the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. This work was successful, so much so that visitation by the 1970s doubled to the low 2 millions. And the park was concerned about the future and the direction they needed. So actually a general management plan was completed in 1971. Management objectives for this plan included a transportation system that would relieve motor vehicle impacts on the Jenny Lake String Lake area, managing the park on a year-round basis, not just for the summer, as a result of growing winter and shoulder season use. Also working to alleviate conflicts between hikers and horseback riders. Perhaps most significantly, the general management plan concluded that there was a limit to the ability to, I'm quoting here, there is a limit to the ability of the park to withstand open-ended overnight accommodations to the public, end quote. So as a result, the plan put in place that overnight accommodations, the number of hotel rooms, the number of campsites would be capped at 1971 levels. The general management plan also recognized that coordinating plans across the region would be essential to ensure the capacities and high quality visitor experience was met both for the park as well as for the region. And the plan, this fundamental plan in 1970 was based on dispersing visitation across the entire park, consistent with a land classification system, which you can see in the graphic here. Areas of high density recreation, general outdoor recreation, areas given over for the natural environment, and for primitive recreation. Moving on in the 1980s and 1990s, perhaps most significantly, was the creation of the Backcountry Management Plan. In the 1980s, the park, over 190,000 visitors were hiking and spending the night in the Teton backcountry. And it was finding that popular areas like the meadows below the lower saddle, Holly and Surprise Lake, were experiencing heavy impacts as a result of this use. And so the 1980 management plan codified the practice of issuing backcountry permits and establishing quotas for camping areas. These quotas were established to make sure that the management objectives were being met in the backcountry over the long run for ensuring high quality visitor experience. Part of the strategies included reducing impacts by prohibiting campfires above 7,000 feet. And later, in order to be able to make this work more effectively with people, the backcountry permit system was put on an advanced reservation system. Moving on into the 2000s, as we moved into a new century of adaptive management, continuing with the philosophy of highly dispersed recreation, there was a need to manage roadside wildlife viewing, so both wildlife and visitors could be able to be safe as well as move around the park. And so that led to the creation of the Wildlife Brigade in 2007. The National Park developed a transportation plan and environmental impact statement that led to the construction of the multi-use pathway connecting Jackson, the town of Jackson, and the park, as well as also calling for improvements to the Moose Wilson Road corridor while maintaining its rural character. The Craig Thomas Discovery Visitor Center opened in 2007, and the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Reserve was established, including a capacity tied directly to the size of the parking lot, to which we continue to manage today. The park also completed a public transit business plan that found that transit service to and through the park would be really, really expensive, and there was no clear path for how the National Park Service would provide the revenue in order to be able to operate such a system at that time. As we moved in the 2010s, we continue to see visitor use management efforts and adaptive management to implementing these long-term plans, including the Jenny Lake Renewal Project, the completion of the Snake River Wild and Scenic River Management Plan, which we continue to implement, as well as beginning to more actively manage visitor use and experience in the String Lake area. And then as we moved into the 2020s, we're taking steps to synthesize what we have done and what we have learned into a more holistic picture at Grand Teton, and trying to extract lessons of what's been achieved in the past to help inform what we're doing. We've expanded on research and data collection. We're going to hear about that in a minute from Jen Newton, our social scientist, and synthesize work that's been done on a site-by-site specific basis to look at the entire park. And we are expanding our work with with the town of Jackson and Teton County. We also recognize there's still hotspots that need to be addressed. A number of projects are underway or planning is going on to address changing visitation. Some of these hotspots may be seeing more use than they were designed for. There are places that are ripe to evaluate, and that how are we managing these spaces? What strategies and facilities might we use going forward? And that's part of where we're going to need your help. And we have a number of projects that are going on. In 2023, we have a number of projects that are happening across the park that are aimed at resource preservation and resource experience. In fact, if you can advance a slide for me, we can see, actually perhaps one more slide. Yep, there we go. Then we'll go back in a second. we have projects that we are implementing long-term plans, including promoting bike use, implementing management practices for the Snake River, Wild and Scenic River, working to protect water quality. And after 75 years from its original construction, we're looking to the renewal of Coulter Bay. And the point of all of this is, and actually if you can go back, Rachel, for me, thank you, is just as we are thinking about where we are today and going forward, it's really, really important for all of us to remember that the National Park Service has been making intentional choices about how to manage for a quality experience. In fact, actually, the National Park Service has a long track record of capital investment as well as implementing carrying capacities in order to be able to maintain quality experience. And we want to be able to build on this track record to help consider where we are today and how we move into the future. So let me introduce Grand Teton National Park's social science, Dr. Jennifer Newton. Jen?
Great, thank you, Chip. I appreciate that and really appreciate everyone sharing their evening with us here. And I'm really excited to share a few of the results from recent studies that we have. And so in the park, as Chip had mentioned, we are using social science and the best available information we have to better understand visitor use and experience in the park. We've worked with contractors, university, our own National Park Service Social Science Office to conduct several studies over the past few years that really help us get that better understanding. Those studies have focused on transportation and visitor movement, visitor motivations, perceptions of the quality of visitors' visits, as well as visitors' activities, perceptions of resource impacts, demographics, and the influence of other visitors on their experience. And so I'm excited to share some of the insights from these studies with you this evening. One of the first key insights that we found from also the monitoring that we do in the park, the visitor use monitoring, is that the overall visitation trend within the park is increasing, including backcountry use. And while there are some changes from year to year, the overall trend is up. And so, for example, our busiest year on record was in 2021, while our second busiest year on record was in 2018. And so while there are some fluctuations from year to year, that overall visitation trend is up. Additionally, currently, approximately 85% of our use is day use in the park. That means that only 15% of our visitors spend the night within the park, and that 85% is spending their night somewhere else in the surrounding area. As the trend of increasing visitation continues, that proportion of visitors that are staying in the park will likely decrease since, like Chip just mentioned in his presentation, we do have a limited number of overnight accommodations within the park. Additionally, with that increase in visitation, that overall trend, there is a bit of a mismatch between our operational capacity, as Chip had mentioned, some of the parking lots and other areas in the park, to be able to meet that demand that we're seeing within the park. Another insight that we had was looking at a very interesting park-wide transportation and visitor movement study, and really helped us learn more about traffic volumes and patterns in the park on a park-wide scale. We found that travel is highly dispersed and varied. Visitors are experiencing the park in an auto touring style. And really that means that this park was kind of built with a private vehicle in mind, like that planning effort that Chip mentioned in the 1970s. And currently that's how people are still using the park. They're utilizing these pullouts and locations along park roadways. As I mentioned, we were looking at transportation and visitor movement on a park-wide scale. And one of the things we were interested in is how people were coming into the region. And so we asked and we're interested in, from where do people enter Teton County? And what we found was that the largest proportion of people who enter Teton County, visitors to our county, are coming from south of Hoback Junction. So that 21% and 11% that you can see at the bottom of the screen there. Another approximately a third are coming over Teton Pass from Idaho, and the remainder are coming from Yellowstone, from Moran, and from the airport that is within the park. So once again, these are not necessarily visitors to Grand Teton, but those who are entering and visiting the surrounding area in the county. We also found that folks who do enter the park stop within the park. And so of all the vehicles that enter Grand Teton National Park, the vast majority, 91% of them, stop somewhere within the park. We also found that the locations where they stop are highly varied and that visitors are making multiple stops. We also found, as I mentioned, there's not a dominant route or travel pattern that we found within this study. Most visitors aren't going directly from point A to point B. It's not that we're seeing a pattern of, folks coming through the entrance gate and immediately going to one location like Jenny Lake or immediately going to Coulter Bay. They are utilizing our pullouts and roadways and making multiple stops throughout the park. I think one of the best examples of this is what I'm sharing on the screen now. This area highlights the areas within the park with the highest percentage of stops. And when I say stops, that means somewhere where you turned your vehicle off within the park. And you can see here that the top 5 locations where visitors stop and turn their vehicle off only comprise about 30% of the total stops. That means that 70% of the stops within the park are at other locations throughout the park, and they all comprise less than 2% of the total stops. So very interesting, and really just is another point that really emphasizes that auto touring style of visitation that we're seeing here within the park. We also found within the study that overall, our roadways and intersections function really well within the park. Granted, we don't have a ton of roadways and intersections within the park, but those that we do have function really well. There are some areas with congestion, but those are mainly in parking areas and at key locations in the park. Other insights that we found from these studies were focused on recreational experience quality. And we found that the demand for recreational activities within the front country, backcountry, and wilderness areas of the park is increasing, and we expect that trend to continue to increase. We also learned more about visitor motivations and activities. Another great example of this is looking at some of the use monitoring that we do within the park regarding trail use. And so you can see on this graph, this summarizes trail use at 9 key locations within the park. And we can see that overall it is increasing. From 2008, there's been a 106% increase in trail use on those trails. And since 2019, there's been a 65% increase of use on those trails. And so really this tells us that people are using the park a little bit differently over this time frame. As I mentioned before, overall recreation visits to the park are increasing, but they're not increasing proportionate to what we're seeing on the trail use. So there are more people accessing the trail use at a greater proportion than those who are coming to the park and recreating in the park. We also, as I mentioned, we're very interested in visitors' motivations on why they want to visit the park. And we can see here that viewing scenery and wildlife, spending time with family and friends, relaxing, and hearing nature and natural quiet are all top reasons and key experiences that people are seeking in the park. And really, this is wonderful. We did a park-wide study to be able to understand this information. And what we're sharing with you today is what we heard from that study. And really what we're hoping is to learn more from all of you as well about what those key experiences you're looking for whenever you visit Grand Teton National Park. So not just necessarily what you're doing in activities in the park, but really those key experiences and why you're motivated and why you want to visit the park. And so very interested in the broader audience here as well. Additionally, we did ask activities as well to see how kind of those motivations are manifesting themselves into activities in the park. And not surprisingly, that viewing scenery and viewing wildlife are key activities that visitors report doing once they're in the park. Additionally, scenic driving is also a top activity, which really aligns well with the other information that we gathered about traffic volumes and traffic patterns within the park. We also asked an open-ended questions of what visitors like most whenever they visit the park. And this is a word cloud of the responses that people wrote about what they like most. And once again, scenery, wildlife, hiking, the beauty all come out very clearly whenever you look at these open-ended responses. Some of the quotes include, scenery and scenic overlooks, saw more wildlife than we ever thought we would. Jackson Lake, beautiful. Another quote, seeing the magnificent scenes of the mountains, hiking, everything was the most beautiful place. And so really, once again, that scenery, that scenic beauty is really coming out in how people value this place. We also asked what visitors like least about their visit. And here's a word cloud of those open-ended responses. And we find in other studies as well, that few visitors report that crowding is a big or an extreme problem in the park. But many visitors report that it's a slight or a moderate issue. And you can see some of that in the word cloud. We also found that visitor interactions and behaviors impact the visitor experience, right? So we impact each other whenever we're out in certain places. And once again, you can see that, and some of the quotes include a couple of areas of high traffic, people, parking. Additionally, we heard things like parking was hard to find at String Lake and Jenny Lake Overlook. And so even in these open-ended responses, we're finding that many respondents were giving specific locations of crowding. And really that's indicating that's not necessarily a park-wide problem. And once again, I just really want to hit home, this is something that we did through a visitor survey, and we're really looking forward to hearing feedback from the broader audience here. And so we want to hear about challenges that you may have as well to visit the park or when you're in the park. One of the last insights I'd like to share is visitors' perceptions of resource impacts. And so across the many studies we did over multiple years, once again, we know the top motivation for visiting Grand Teton National Park is to experience scenery. And when natural resources are impacted, visitors' experience of those resources are impacted as well. And what we found on peak visitation days, some parking areas overflow with vehicles. And so vehicles are parking on road shoulders and roadside vegetation. These parking areas are connected to points between the park's road network and the trail system. And so as visitors are moving throughout this system, they're noticing these impacts of vegetation in these areas. Other problems that visitors reported, at least a third of visitors reported noticing visible vegetation loss from user-created trails and sites, and also the actions and behaviors of other visitors, including the loss of natural quiet. So thinking of things like Bluetooth speakers and things like that. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of these insights that we gained from some of these studies. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Rachel.
Great, thank you, Jen, for that. And I am going to take us into where we're going next. Chip spoke really well about where we've been and some of the eras we have been through. And Jen just gave us a great overview of our understanding of where we are now and what we're learning. And so we want to start turning our attention towards where are we going and what's the purpose of this process that we're engaging right now. And on the broadest level, what we're doing is we're engaging in following the VUM framework and engaging in a process to look at what with that might look like going forward as far as what tools we're bringing to manage use. So let's do a little bit of unpacking of all of those broad statements. So we've been using the term visitor use management, and we've been doing visitor use management for a long time and studying and understanding it. But when we use that term, what does it mean? What it means is that we're engaging in a proactive and adaptive process. It's not necessarily a plan or a single document, but it's more, I want to emphasize this, about the process of looking at the different types and characteristics of the use of our parks and thinking about how we're going to manage for and sustain our desired conditions for resources and provide really important visitor experiences. This is going to sound really familiar because it's very related to our Park Service mission. And we know when we focus on managing visitor use, there are a number of aspects or levers that we can pull to achieve those desired conditions. First thing that people think about a lot of time is the amount of use. And they start to think about things like a capacity. And in some cases, this is a really important lever, but it's not the only lever. We want to be thinking also about behaviors and how we manage. We want to be considering behaviors like what happens when coolers are left unattended or approaching wildlife. In those cases, it's really important to change what we're doing or how we're managing that. We want to be thinking about education as we think about how we might think about helping people understand to stay near their coolers or appropriate distances from wildlife. Just as a total aside, I saw it come out and my 7-year-old is now really into the thumb tool. And it's just, those are the great educational things that help us maintain safe distances. We also want to think about distribution across the park. We can think about different types of engineering solutions to think about how we're spreading people out across days or seasons and how that might have different impact. For example, Jenny Lake is a much different place at noon in July than it is at 6 p.m. in October. And Jenny Lake is a very different place from Matilda Lake entirely. And so we want to be thinking about all those different settings as we approach these visitor use management questions. Because we know when we engage in a meaningful and thoughtful visitor use management process, we are going to gain a number of really important benefits. First, we're going to be engaging people in really impactful, connected experiences, and we really want to make sure that those high quality experiences are maintained. We want to be protecting the fundamental resources and values of the park, things like scenery, wildlife, that make this place so special and made it so special that it warranted national designation as a part of the National Park Service. Those are significant attributes. We know that when people have a meaningful and enjoyable experience when they visit their parks, that can lead to long-term advocacy for public lands and stewardship of these shared resources. If they don't have those experiences, how is that going to happen? And we also want to be building better relationships. In some ways, that's what this meeting and this series over the next couple of weeks is all about. We want to be working together on this and really thinking through what this practice is going to look like, big picture, and how all the benefits that are a part of it. And we also want to be thinking about innovative solutions, which is why we want to hear from you. We want to be thinking not just about one size fits all approaches, but really thinking about context and thinking about the range of types of visitors. You can take one solution that works for a different park, and we can't just pick it up and plop it in Grand Teton. Grand Teton is a rare, unique, and exemplary place that is important, and we want to maintain that going forward. The really great news with visitor use management is that we're not making it up and we're not doing it alone. The Interagency Visitor Use Management Council was founded 12 years ago to provide guidance, consistency, and defensibility for how we're managing visitors on federal lands. So it brought together the Park Service, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, mostly known as NOAA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Those are the 6 agencies that all manage federal land, and their logos are on the bottom of the screen there. And it brought them together to come up with shared guidance across the agencies. So among other things, the council has provided us with a VUM framework. This is an actual guidebook. It's available online, publicly available. You can download it from the website. And this interagency guidance lets us know how we can share best practices, how we can share language. And this is the process that we're leveraging in places like the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem to really think broadly across this and how we can be learning from each other as we go through this process. So I mentioned the framework and I wanted to share it with you. This is what the framework looks like. The framework from the council is a process. And really, when we think about it, that it's a structure for helping us think through what it means to be thoughtful, what it means to be strategic, and what it means to really just kind of do good strategic thinking as we approach visitor use management issues or visitor use management opportunities. The VUM framework is divided into 4 major elements. It is the what, why, how, and do structure. And it should look really familiar to folks who spend some time thinking about these kinds of things. Again, because it's just good strategic thinking. It's good planning. And it's represented here as a wheel because it's an iterative process. As long as we have visitors in the park, we're going to be engaging in this process. And Chip shared that earlier about how we've been working our way around this wheel. And also Jen has shared with us so many insights of new things that we're learning. And so this is an opportunity for us to revisit this wheel and kind of work our way around it and start to think about, are we learning anything that is going to help us inform our next steps, how we go into the future, what are we doing now that's working really well, and what opportunities are in front of us that we want to be capitalizing on as we think future forward. So with that kind of big picture about where we're going, I'm going to turn it back over to Chip to talk to us a little bit about how you, our friends, our neighbors, our visitors can be involved in this important process.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Jen. Really appreciate it. So it is absolutely vital that we have people participate in this process. It is your feedback will help us understand what is important to you. We are open now in terms of taking comments, and the comment period will be open through October 10th. One of the resources that you can use is a background on a story map, and hopefully we're putting a link to the story map in the chat so that people will be able to have easy access to that. What we also really encourage you to do is think about a series of specific questions to guide your input. It's really helpful if you think about what experiences are most important to you. What have been the best part of your experiences at Grand Teton? What's been the worst? And tell us why. What has the park used to effectively address crowding and congestion that you have seen? What got in the way of you enjoying the park? And I think helping us by saying why, what it is that you are hoping will happen, and explaining to us why, so that we can help understand your reasoning. Now, the way to be able to provide those comments is through our online planning portal. And again, I think we'll see if we can't actually just put this link directly in the chat so you can cut and paste it. You can, as it says, click on it, go right to the comment now, and you can, while you're listening to this, go ahead and type away if you like. And we're going to turn here in a minute to actually taking some of your questions online. But I do just want to emphasize, both I, as a superintendent, Rachel and Jen and the other members of the planning team, the entire senior leadership team, and all of us at work here at Grand Teton National Park, we value your voice, and we want to hear from you. So we hope that you will use this opportunity between now and October 10th to be able to help us help you by understanding what it is that you want for Grand Teton in the future. Back to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Chip. So we are going to head towards our Q&A period and have a chance for folks to have any questions about what you heard about the history, or about what you heard from Jen about what we're learning, or overall process questions. As Chip said, comments we're taking through the online portal, and that is, we'll continue to get that link into the chat so folks have it and are available to it. But if you have any questions that are going to help inform your comments or clarify anything for you on this visitor use management process and the process that we're heading into, we'd love to take those. So this will be a great time to start putting those into the Q&A pod. We're organizing them in the background. We do have a panel of folks, the folks that you've been hearing from as a part of this presentation, as well as Jeremy Barnum, our Chief of Staff, is on as well to help answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to take a 2-minute pause right here. So we'll get started again just about 4:45. So this will give folks a chance to kind of digest what you've been hearing, type any questions into the chat pod that you might have. We're going to get them organized in the background kind of by theme so we can catch up on them. And we will be right back to start the Q&A period again in just about 2 minutes here. So go ahead and get those questions in. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Thanks. Okie doke, let's jump back in. We're seeing some questions come in, but don't be shy if you've got questions for us. We're here, happy to answer them. Go ahead and type those in, send them on over to the moderator. But let's start with this one for Jen. Jen, we have a question about kind of visitor use profiles. You shared a lot of information with us about this, but someone's curious about the percentage of visitors who are coming from Wyoming versus from other parts of the country. Do we have any information about where our visitors are coming from and what the makeup looks like?
Great, thanks, Rachel. Great question. So we do have information from the park-wide socioeconomic monitoring study that we did. And we found, and this is consistent with other studies and other locations that we've done in the park as well, that about 8% of our visitation is from the state of Wyoming. In fact, we have more visitation from the states of California and Texas, respectively, than we do from the state of Wyoming. So it only comprises about 8% of our total visitation. And we do have visitors coming from, in the most recent study, 49 of the 50 states. We have visitors represented there. And so, yeah, our local, our Wyoming population is a relatively small portion of our total visitation to the park.
Great, thanks, Jen. Okay, I'm watching a few more questions kind of come in. Just gonna kind of scan here to see what's ready. It looks like we've got one about there've been a number of kind of reservation systems that have been happening service-wide as we think about that. So Chip, do you want to jump on and chat with us about like what kind of reservation systems does Teton have? What might be in the works?
Sure. Well, I think it isn't when getting asked that question, is the park considering a reservation system? I think the starting point of that conversation is actually a number of reservation systems already exist, right? We have reservations through recreation.gov for campgrounds, for backcountry permits. The hotels, of course, have reservations. Some of the eating establishments, some of the commercial tour and concessions, whether you're doing a float trip or fly fishing trip or going climbing with one of the guide services or horseback riding, all generally rely upon making use of a reservation system. In terms of the question, if the question is meaning for day use, for outside of those kind of commercial tours like climbing, guiding, fishing, rafting, horseback riding, wildlife tours, and whatnot, no, we do not have plans. We do not have plans, at least for parking or entry into the park. We're not at the point that we see that that's a tool that is needed for problems that we may be having. So that work?
Great. It does. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'm sure if someone has a follow-up, they'll go ahead and put it into the question pod for us. I think one more, I think Chip, maybe you and I can tag team this one. I'll get started, is that we're not proposing anything with this process. And usually when we open Pepsi, it's because we have a proposal and we're looking for feedback on it. And this is a different kind of comment period that we're doing. And I think we've talked about it a little bit as far as, what we're trying to achieve with this process. And I think, so I'll answer a little bit of like, before we even start into thinking about what we might propose, we just want to kind of hear what's going well, where could we be improving, what opportunities are ahead of. But I'm sure Chip and maybe others have other thoughts on that topic as well.
Yeah, I think it's, we are, as I said, the National Park Service has about 100 years of working with stakeholders on how we manage for a high quality visitor experience. And all of those continue to be informed by input from the public as we continue to face changing visitation. And let me ask this question. How many people think that it's likely that we will have less visitation in 5 years? And how many people think it is likely that we will have more visitation in 5 years? So, you know, if you think, like the majority of people that I've been talking to think that we are likely to have more visitation in 5 years and that it will continue to change, we need to be able to continue our history of adaptively manage. And what we're trying to do right now is get clearer amongst ourselves, with you, with the rest of the public about exactly what are the experiences we're trying to manage for, and how do levels of visitation affect that. And we need to hear your voice in terms of being able to figure that out. Thanks.
Great. And this is the value of having a big team. Is there's a related question that just came in about how will the comments that we're putting in now inform our process going forward. And what we're trying to do with this comment period and these processes is, again, really look for, you know, Jen shared with us some of the things that are challenging from visitor surveys, but kind of expanding that for the folks who are future visitors who haven't been here in a while to be able to weigh in on that topic. What's challenging for you? And those are the things that we maybe could start to work on. We also want to hear what's going well, what are opportunities ahead of us, and those are the things that we could start to figure out, how do we continue to do those things. And that's the thing, is we just kind of want to have a bigger scope of figuring out, like, what would the next steps be. And that's where it's hard to say exactly how these comments will form the next steps, because these comments will determine the next steps as we go forward, because you guys are going to tell us what direction to head with this process as we work our way through the framework. Okay, then I'm going to head back over to Chip. This one's for you. Is Grand Teton considering adding more trails as trail use increases? Jen talked a little bit about the trail use increases. How about parking lots or campgrounds? In other words, is there a way for us to increase the park's inventory for recreational opportunities as the crowds continue to grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would say, you know, the idea of increasing trails, increasing campgrounds, increasing parking. And so actually what I would ask is for people who have that question is, do you see a need for increased trails or parking or campgrounds, and what are acceptable trade-offs for you related to that, and provide that into our in the comments. We're trying to understand where do you see that might be. It seems and what that might look like. I will say, we are looking to abide by the decision made in the 1971 General Management Plan of not increasing overnight accommodations, whether it's lodging or campgrounds. But that notion in terms of changing or adding parking, the notion in terms of adding trails, we would be interested in hearing from you. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Where do you see that might be? And the trade-offs that you think that we might need to face with that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Don't go too far, Chip. I have one more for you. We're going to circle back on the reservations question, because we have someone who is saying, dovetailing with the reservation question as a follow-up, we've noticed that there are some timed entry for day use systems coming up both in the Intermountain region and other parts of the system. So are we considering timed entry? I think you touched on this in your previous answer, but just want to make sure that we circle back on that question since it came up again.
Yeah, and I think you know, again, I'm just going to point out something, you know, a little bit interesting is that for some places there are actually timed reservations, right? You can make time reservations for going to an eating establishment, for getting on some of the commercial guided trips. So I think it's what would be helpful for us is hearing if you think that is a tool that should be used in other circumstances in the park. What what does that look like? Are you thinking that that might be for a specific parking lot? Are you thinking it's for the hiker shuttle? Are you thinking that it might be for something else in the park? And if you think that's attractive or you think that it's not attractive, tell us why. Why is it that you think? What is it about a timed reservation that you like? What is it that it gives you? If you're concerned about it, what is the barrier? What's the concern? Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'm just skimming my list to catch up on my chat pod and see what else we might have. Okay. It looks like we are getting through most of the questions that we currently have, so we're happy to hang for a few more minutes. If anything else comes up, feel free to go ahead and pop it into the chat pod. But for those of us who have hung through on the beginning, I will do, in case there's any lingering questions, a couple of refreshers and reminders for folks, for those who are sticking with us and want to just make sure they have all of the relevant information. So we did want to give a reminder of folks about what questions we're looking for. And this goes back to the questions we were just talking about of, why are we asking these questions? Because learning more from y'all about the experiences in the park, what's going well, what both from what are the good experiences and what strategies are you currently seeing in the park that are really being useful and helpful to you, and is there anything that's getting in the way that we could be working on, and other thoughts you want to share with us is a great thing. You're going to find those questions again when you head over to the park planning portal, and one of my colleagues will drop that link into the chat one more time, so you don't have to scroll and look for it, but you can go there. There's a link to the story map to learn more about what we talked about in this meeting and additional information. You can also go right to the comment now button, go ahead and provide your input on those questions, let us know. And we said the comment period is going to be open through October 10th. Come back as many times as you want to that portal. There's no limit on that. And so we can go ahead and have that. So I think, let me just check in one more time. Okay, I think we've got one question about, one more question that came in about shuttles. Are we considering adding shuttles to alleviate any parking issues?
Want me to take that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chip.
Sure thing. So again, I think we are a couple of different things. I think again, it would be really, really valuable for us if you are thinking that shuttle or transit is something that the National Park Service and the community ought to consider for Grand Teton. It would be really, really helpful for us to hear what does that look like for you? What does that mean? So, for example, where is it that you would like to park? What is the kind of experience that you are trying to have when riding the shuttle? Are you looking for the current kind of visitation where people are going to many different places around the park for short duration, or are you looking to try to go to one destination? What is it that you are trying to achieve in terms of other kinds of trade-offs? Is the suggestion that cars should be limited or banned and only access should be provided? Is that everywhere in the park, or is that to just some places? So it's really helpful to us in terms of having you tell us more about what it is that what that looks like, what a shuttle system would look like to you. And then what I would say is what we are doing is we continue to work with the Town of Jackson, Teton County's transportation administrator, the Regional Transportation District, START, Southern Teton Area Rapid Transit, to have conversations and try to understand and explore the problems that might possibly be solved associated with transit. And again, welcome your input on that. Back to you,
Great.
Rachel.
Thank you. Okay, and then we have one more question that came in about we use the term quality visitor experience or connected experiences, educational experiences, insightful experiences. Jen talked a bunch in her presentation about kind of some of the different attributes of a visitor experience or why people come. So I thought maybe I'd invite Jen back to see, Jen, if you have any additional thoughts from all the social science that you've been working on about how do we think about assessing the quality of the visitor experience? How do we know a good visitor experience? And how do we look at that?
Thanks, Rachel. That's a great question. And so we work really hard to ensure that we get a random sample of visitors whenever we sample visitors within the park. And so really are deliberate about getting that random smattering, not just folks who want to take a survey or things like that, but really try and get a random sample of visitors who are here in the park. And then really being thoughtful about the types of questions we're asking, right? So asking about what are the motivations and why people want to come here? And then asking the follow-up question of like, well, were you able to achieve that? Right. And so it's kind of a twofold thing and us to understand kind of, is there a gap there, or is that like pretty narrow that folks are coming for a certain reason and then able to achieve that as well once they're here within the park. So that really helps us understand kind of the quality of their experience, if they're able to achieve these things that they came for, or if there's a gap there somewhere. We also ask questions like, how big of a problem were certain things, and leave that open as well. We want to know, how our facilities and services are doing. And so we do ask questions like that are a little more pointed about areas that might be issues within the park. And then sometimes too, it just depends on the type of survey, but really it's being thoughtful and using the best available science and information that we have, and working really closely with universities and things like that. And so we can ask these really good questions to help us understand that. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jen. Okie doke. Looks like we have gotten one more question. They're still filtering in as people are hanging with us on this meeting. We got a question about how do we proactively and intentionally kind of manage access to the park as a part of our visitor use management toolbox. Like, what are the options when it comes to thinking about VUM in terms of managing access to the park? And I'm going to toss that one over to Chip.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, got it. Thanks, Rachel. Well, so again, I think from the perspective of Grand Teton National Park and the National Park Services, when we are thinking about managed access, we are thinking about the totality of everything that we do in the park. So for example, we actively manage access in the backcountry through the backcountry permit system, right? And the backcountry permit system is created so that we are managing to have a high quality wilderness experience by managing the number of people that can spend the night in different zones in the backcountry. We are managing overnight use in the front country by having the limiting the number of hotel rooms and campsites that are here, which coincidentally then kind of create the economic incentive for overnight accommodations getting created by the private sector outside the park. We also manage access related to day use. So, for example, at the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Reserve, we have a quality of visitor experience that is established for the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Reserve that is tied to the amount of parking at the LSR. And so we actively manage the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Reserve parking lot to one car in, and once it's full, one car in, one car out, or one car out, one car in, I mean. A different place that people may be familiar with is String Lake, where again, we have identified the visitor experiences that we're trying to provide at String Lake, connected to the number of people who can be there, and it is sized to the parking lot at String Lake. And so over time, the park is adaptively managed to making it really so it's just the cars that can fit into the String Lake parking lot, and there is no easily accessible overflow parking associated with String Lake. Rather than directly managing that to one car out, one car in, we inform people when the parking lot is full. People are free to wait or be at the parking lot and wait for parking spaces to be able to open up and then occupy those. And then in contrast is a different place like Jenny Lake, where while the experience there is signed to size to quality of experience, both at the Front Country in Jenny Lake and Inspiration Point, and the volume of hiker shuttle going across the lake is to support maintaining just the number of people, not exceed the number of people to go over there to overwhelm the trailhead. People are free to park along the Jenny Lake entrance road as well as the inner park road and walk in. And so those are three different strategies in terms of how we've been managing day use here at Grand Teton National Park. And now what we need is help from you all in terms of what is it that you would like to see, how those different examples of what we currently do you see that they might be applied elsewhere in the park? And why is it? What is it that you would hope to achieve by doing that? Rachel, does that work?
It does. Thank you very much. And it looks like that is all the questions that we have for this session. So thanks so much, folks, for joining us. I did just want to do one more set. Oh, sorry, there was one more. It was for me. This is a good closing question. Is this being recorded so it can be accessed later? The answer is yes, absolutely. It is being recorded. We are recording this session. It'll usually take us 3 to 5 business days to pull the recording down, clean up the transcript so that the captions are there and get it all 508 compliant, and then we will post it. The same place where you found the link for this meeting on the meeting notices page on the project page is the same place where you're going to be able to find the link to the recording. So that'll be the place where when we have that link, it'll go up on that. I also wanted to give a brief reminder about the questions. You can find those on Pepsi, and also to let folks know, I'm just going to put the question slide or back up so that that's familiar to folks, and also the reminder to comment, where the URL is, how to get to the comment now button, and that we're really looking forward to reading those comments. The really nice thing about the system that we have is it is not fully automated. There is no AI within the system. It is still just humans. So the time that you put into putting a letter and putting comments together is the time that we take on the other side to read those letters. So your letter is going to be read by one of the people that you've seen on the screen today. We read all of those letters and we see them and incorporate them in our process. So just know that you are not sending a letter into machine learning. You are still sending it to humans who you've met today on the presentation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our superintendent, Chip Jenkins, for any closing remarks.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jen. Again, just all of you that have tuned in, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time tonight. As you have questions, as you have thoughts, please send them to us. Grand Teton National Park today and in the future need your help. We look forward to hearing you. And we are committed to continuing to engage you and others who care about Grand Teton into the future. Thanks very much. Have a great Labor Day weekend.